Hey, did everybody get an exam review packet? Hey guys, raise your hand if you did not get an exam review packet.
I didn't get it.
I don't know. Thursday-ish. Hey, anybody else? Everybody got one? Exam review packet? All right.
Mr. Hurry, you had stuff in for the last like 3 days.
No, not today. Thursday or Friday best. It's got the exam schedule on it too, I guess. All right, how does this classwork looking? Easy. Did y'all really lock into that that number 8 and 9 and see the difference? Number 8, what did we find out? They made what? We did that in class, I think.
A lot more, like 9.
What was 8? Y'all remember?
It's like 3.
It was the one where he invested.
No, I know, but what was the number? I'm looking for the number.
Oh,
What did we find on this? 3 million. And then what did we find out about a friend of mine?
like
1 million.
Or Efren Dominion?
1.3.
yeah, but it's a little
1.3. So 1.3 versus 3.2. She did the exact same thing as Biff, but she waited 10 years to get it in. I mean, wrap your brain around that. I waited 10 years. 32 is young, guys. I know right now you think 32 is old, but like 32 was forever ago for me. I mean, my oldest kid was 4, and she's getting married in 3 weeks. I mean, like, that was forever ago. And she took 10 years off, then really was aggressive in her funding her IRA for 30 years. And she ended up with roughly a little bit more than a third, but definitely less than half of what Biff, and all Biff did was do the first 10 and then leave it in there. It is so, I just can't emphasize, if there's one thing you get from this conversation that we've been having, is get it in early and often. And again, you're really young at 32. You're going to have things that come up. And again, so I forgot to mention this maybe in this class, but I've had kids in the past go, man, Mr. Hurry's all about the cash. It's all he's concerned with. I'm like, I'm a school teacher, for goodness sake. Okay, it is not just about the cash. It's about being wise. Okay, it really is anti about the cash. It's really about just getting it in there, living a life maybe a little bit more conservative than you're able to, especially early. Get the seeds in the ground early and let them grow. I mean, you're going to get raises. You're probably like, I wouldn't have this conversation with everybody. Not everybody has the brains that you guys do. Now, your work ethic is really what's going to make the difference. The brains might get you in the door. They might be who you know, whatever. But once you get your first job, very few people are looking back at what you did in college. I've never had anyone ask me what my high school grades were after I filled out my last application for college. And they didn't ask, I just threw them in there. So anyway, all that's important that we do well, but ultimately, you guys are going to be in the position, if you work hard and if you care about whatever it is you want to do, you can still fund your retirement at least. I mean, fund beyond that if you want to. Put yourself in a position to be a gift to other people. I remember when my wife and I were about to have our third child, Caroline. I remember going, all right, let me just do a run. We got the third car seat, and I went out to our little black 4Runner, which was our SUV. It's a 1994 4Runner that my son still drives. And I go and I put the car seat in there, and I go to shut the door. This is like a month before she was born, maybe 6 weeks. And the door won't shut. And I'm like, we literally do not have a car where we can put all of our children. And I was like, crap. So I got I don't know what I was looking at the time, but I started researching, all right, we were looking at like a 1999 Tahoe, like 3 years old, something bigger. We could get 3 car seats in. And I remember my grandmother-in-law walked up and said, what are you doing? However she sounds, what are you doing? And I said, looking for a car. We got to get a little bigger car for the family. And like 2 weeks later, she calls me up and she goes, I want you to go down to the dealership and I want you to find a new Tahoe and I want you to get them down as low as they can and then give me a call. I was like, okay. I was going to humor her. I didn't know what she had in mind. I was kind of secretly going, is she going to buy us a Tahoe? Sure enough, I just literally went down there, found the best Tahoe I could find, and she literally walked down there, paid cash for it, and said, happy third baby. She did not get to that place by throwing her money around. And she didn't live, she might have lived extravagantly for New Brockton, Alabama, but she did not live extravagantly. I think when they sold her house, it sold for $60,000. It was this little old house built in the 40s. Same house she, I guess, didn't get married in, but got moved into shortly after. Point was, she was a blessing to others because she'd saved up her money. That could be you, a blessing to your grandkids when they're like, we're about to take on this big payment or whatever. So anyway, you can make those choices. Again, it's not just about the money. I think you guys will be able to have your cake and eat it too. But if you do that minimum, it's going to put you in a pretty decent position, a great position. And if you make great money, I've always said anything between 10 and 20%. I mean, if you could put 20% of your take home in a fund, you can do 10%. Think if you made $100,000 a year, you could put 10,000 away of that. Even if it was your take home, say you took home 70,000 after taxes, you could put 7,000 away. You could fully fund this, put a little bit extra away as well, maybe for a down payment on a house or for your kids' college funds. All those things are going to be things that you're going to have to do. But anyway, and then we just had a conversation about this here, but there's another one that I wanted to show you. Okay, so number 11 on this sheet said Biff got a loan on a house that cost $280,000, but made so it's clearly not in Homewood, but made a $50,000 down payment. He is paying off the house over a 30-year period at 6.15%, which is really high for now. Now your rates are 3 something. They're probably going to move up, and it's amazing. Every time it moves up 1%, your payment goes up significantly a month, which is part of the reason why everybody's rushing to the housing market, because the rates are so low, but they're about to start moving up. And they're like, if I can lock in a rate for the next 30 years, I can afford a bigger house, and it's driving the housing market crazy. Anyway, how much is his monthly payment? But here's the real question: how much does this house really cost Biff? So the question there is, how much is he actually going to end up paying for this house? So I want you to look at this. So if he made a $50,000 down payment, what is his actual present value of the loan? $230,000. So the 50 and the 280 really don't show up here, but the 230 is my present value because that's what I still owe. That's what I'm borrowing from the bank. So I'm going to plug that in there. It says he's paying off the house with a 30-year mortgage. So 30 is the number of years, bless you. The interest rate, 6.15. It says monthly payment. So payments per year would be 12. And that 12 also goes up here because remember the PPY is also there. How much does the house really cost? It doesn't say anything about compounding. So when it doesn't, what do you assume? It's the same. So I'm going to put a 12 in there. I'm making my first payment when? Beginning or end on a loan? At the end of the period, whatever it is. It doesn't mean the end of the month. It means the end of the period that you borrowed. And a lot of banks like to make that the end of the month or the first of the month or the third of the month whenever they kind of do their loans. So if I happen to have a closing on my house, a closing is where you go in there and you finalize all the paperwork and there's a lawyer involved and probably your real estate agent maybe or your mortgage company. They all get in a room, or now they might do it virtually or send in the paperwork ahead of time. But some lawyer comes in there and the two parties meet, the one buying, the one selling, and you sign off your life away or whatever. And any extra money that's owed, right? And the bank check is there. And again, if you don't have any idea what you're doing on that, whoever you buy the house from will. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't act like you know what you're doing. More than likely, your parents have bought a house and have some experience in that regard. But you just get or one of your friends will be a mortgage loan guy. Like I got a friend, Craig Tyndall, who was one of my former roommates, and he's like, I got you, man. The first time I bought a house, and he set up everything, whatever. But anyway, that kind of stuff, you get all organized on your closing, you close the deal. And if you did that on the 17th of June, more than likely your bank's like, well, we usually have our people make the payments on, like, say it's the 4th. So since we're already past the 4th, you would make your payment either first payment 2 weeks later, or a lot of times they're like, you want to just wait a month and a half? And a lot of times people are like, yeah, let's just wait a month and a half because I don't want to make my payment so quickly and cost all this extra money to buy my first house because you're like, doing painting and maybe you need new rugs or furniture or all that junk and whatever. But anyway, payment is what I'm trying to find. Future value is what I'm trying to get to is 0. So I come down here, and has anybody calculated that yet?
Yes, it's 1,401.22
Okay, so this is what your monthly payment is. Now, I said, so you're paying that much a month on this house. Now, just to show you the difference in that interest rate and an interest rate, change that to 4, just for fun. Change that to 4 and tell me what your payment is. I tell you what, change it to 3 point. Change it to. Somebody get something different.
Yeah.
Do you have beginning and end highlighted right?
Yeah.
How about 30-year mortgage rates? So right now, that's not right. There's no way that's right. Is that right? Good night. It's getting up there.
Getting up where?
Wow, 5.6.
Is that good or bad?
It's higher than it's been in years.
And is that,
Today's refi, that's a 15-year.
is that a bad thing?
Yeah, you don't want a high rate if you're buying a house. 300, cash out refinance. That's a 15-year fixed. 30-year fixed. Okay, so on a 30-year fixed. Wow. Look at how that's jumped from 3%. This is going to ask me for my life. No, it's not good. Okay, 3.88. So yeah, plug in 4%. That's kind of an average. Oh, by the way, guys, just another thing. A lot of these companies right here, you can't see this, but you'll notice these rates are like, 3.88, 4.0, 4.25. And you're looking at them going, well, why would I want a higher rate? A lot of times these annual percentage rates, they are not figuring in stuff like points. A point is like if you owe $300,000, then you're going to pay a 3-point penalty because a point for each 100,000. What that means is they might charge you $3,000 to do your mortgage, whereas another place might charge you less. So it doesn't really matter what they're loaning the money for. If they tack on a $3,000 bill into that, the effective rate of your mortgage is going up. It's kind of like if I'm saying, if you're like, hey, Mr. Ray, I'll sell you this sandwich for $6. And you're like, I'll sell you it for $9. But he goes, oh yeah, but I also have this fee in there for blah, blah, blah. Well, if the fee ends up making it more expensive than her sandwich, even though it's cheaper, then it probably is better. It's kind of like shipping too, right?
Yeah.
If one of them was like 100, the other one's 96, but the 100 gives you free shipping, the 96, the shipping's $5. Well, you're paying more for the $96 one. Well, be careful about the mortgage and ask them, what is my out the door rate? Like out the door, after points, after fees, after all the stuff that you do, what's my effective rate? Or bottom line is, what's going to be my monthly payment? Because it's really more about your monthly payment. You like, look at these. This rate was higher than this, right? But look at your monthly payment. Exactly the same, right? Because the fees were more here. The fees here are $5,000, even though you're paying a higher rate. Pretty close though. And sometimes it's about service. So, and this is these are all 15-year fixed. And if you're wondering about what a 15-year fixed is, a 15-year fixed means you're going to pay that house off over 15 years. I want to show you that too. You think, oh, a lot of people like 30-year mortgages because it drops the rate. But a 15-year mortgage, you're like, crap, I got to pay it off in half the time. My mortgage is probably twice as big. Not true. Because just like exponential curve growth, exponential curve decay is similar. So if I can pay it off quicker, I'm not going to pay as much as you might think. We can look back at this problem and I'll show you. It might be your mortgage might go from $1,400 to $1,800, but you're like, oh, it only went up $400 and I went half the time. That's huge for you. Some people like to do a 30-year mortgage so they have the flexibility of paying less and they just pay more whenever they can. Like I have a friend, he's actually a realtor now, but for the longest time he worked for the JH Ranch. And then he worked for Farm Links. He has done a number of different things. But he used to, on his mortgage, and maybe he still does this, he pays off an extra payment a year. So just one extra year. And just so basically like in 1 month, if he has a good month, he'll just do a double payment on his mortgage. And it knocks 7 years off your mortgage. Just paying 1/12 more knocks off 1/5 of his actual time he's going to be paying on it. And it cleans up his mortgage in 23 years instead of 30. So, but anyway, be careful about those 15-year fixed. The only negative thing about it is you do have to make those payments. If you can't afford that full payment every time on that 15 years, they can foreclose on you. They can come in there and say, hey, if you can't pay your bills, we're going to sell your house, take the money you owe us, give you the difference and walk away. You're not a good risk for them. So a lot of people like a 30 and then they have the mindset, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit of extra payments, knock that thing down. Like I had a 30-year mortgage that we've had our house for 17 years. And just a year ago, maybe 15 months ago, we just decided to pay it off. So we have no house payment anymore. I mean, we still have repairs and junk like that. It's a huge blessing because that monthly payment we're making, now we just don't pay it. We just have it. So it's kind of nice. Now, granted, we had to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get that thing paid off, but it's kind of a nice position right now. So I paid on ours for 17 years. And then once we got to a place where we could knock it out, we knocked it out. And there's pros and cons of every situation. Some people go, oh, I don't advocate for that. I don't, blah, blah, blah. Money's cheap. Keep your money in your house. That mortgage, you didn't pay a very big interest rate. Invest that money. Well, maybe you do better investing. Maybe you don't. Depends on where you are and what the year's looking like. I'm down big time this year. I'm probably down 7-10% on the year in my investments. But the last 2 years, I was up 50. So, I mean, who knows? Nobody's a perfect analyzer of the future. Yes.
Did they just raise interest rates?
They have been raising interest rates. And I'm going to going back to that problem, I'm going to show you when they raise interest rates, it's a significant difference in your house payment. So when interest rates, say you can afford $1,500 a month. You're like, okay, I've done my budget. Here's where I'm spending. I want to have a little bit set aside out of my monthly payment for rainy days and broken air conditioners and broken cars and things that pop up. But here's what I think me and my spouse or me, here's what I think I can afford. And you take that number and you kind of work backwards. You go to your calculator maybe and you say, here's what I can afford, $1,500. What would be the present value of my loan? And by working backwards, you can kind of figure out what kind of house you can afford. And some people go, well, I'm just going to plan on having a raise every year, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But at that same breath, make sure you plan on getting laid off in a bad economy. Because I've had men that I know that are brilliant men, amazing people. Like I could think of one guy in particular, one of the sharpest people I know, he's been laid off twice in his lifetime, where one time he went 6-8 months without work and his wife was not employed. She was raising their 3 sons. And I mean, it was a tight period for them, kind of like a little bit sketchy and shaky and nervous. So, you try to plan for everything and hope for the best and brace for the worst and be wise about it. But at 4%, going back to this, what happened? Did y'all figure out what was going on? Was it 1,400?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens when you change it to 4%? Same problem, just put a 4% in there instead of a 6. 1.5. I bet it goes down $300 or $400 a month. Anybody do it? Down 300. So $300 a month just from an interest rate. Same house, same loan. So think about what that does to the economy. If all of a sudden the feds raise the rate, it was at 2, There was a point a year and a half, 2 years ago where you could get a loan for 1.85%. And you think of the difference between 1.85 and 6, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of what you can afford. I mean, you might be able to afford a $600,000 house versus a $400,000 house. That's a change in neighborhood. That's a change in city, perhaps. Change in drive time, change in all those things. So those are important things to consider. But as they raise the rates, which they're doing, it makes you can afford less house. Well, if you can afford less house, the demand on those higher end homes, including homes in Homewood that might not seem higher end but just cost more, the little $420,000 salt box houses over there next to Pizzeria GM. I don't know if you know where Flinko lives, but like I had a friend sell their house. They live right. If you're looking at Flinko's house, they live right next door to the right. And it's this 1,000 square foot house that just sold for $415,000. It's like, oh my gosh. I mean, that's crazy money. I mean, I got a 3,600 square foot house with a 3-car garage and a half-acre lot, little creek running around the perimeter. And I think I bought my house for $358,000. I might be able to get $6,000 out of it. My house in Homewood, oh my gosh, I could never afford that house in Homewood. It'd be double the value of what it's currently worth, just sitting in here in the school system versus Oak Mountain. But anyway, point is, I wanted you to see that interest rate, but I also want you to do this. Take that $1,700. Remember, he bought this house for $280,000. Take that $1,700. How many actual payments did he make on 30-year loan? $360. So multiply that. What was it? 1,701. Multiply 1,701 by 360 and tell me what you get.
504,000.
No, was it 1,701?
It's 1401.
This one is 1401. Sorry. So 1401 times 360. What did you get?
504,439.
And subtract 280 from it. What was your number again? I just did 1401 times 360 and I got 504,360. So just roughly 504. I subtract 280 from that. Subtract 280,000 from that, which is the cost of the house. I paid $224,000 in interest. $224,000 in interest you're giving the bank. Now let's go back to that 403B. Or some of your investing can actually be done through yourself. So like, let's just say, and I don't know if it applies to all homes, but I know on a 403B, which is one of the investment things that I had, well, I still have it, but I fund something else now. But on that 403B, I could actually borrow from my retirement fund for my kids' college, for my home. Sometimes you're allowed to do that. But the beautiful part is you have to pay yourself back. And if you don't, they penalize you. But if I'm paying myself back, where's all that interest going? Back to me or back to you, as opposed to some bank. So it frees you up to maybe have a 30-year loan. I'm just paying myself off. Or it frees you up to have a 15-year loan if you want. Doesn't matter. I also wanted you to see this. Do these same numbers again, but I want you to do, let's just say you had, what did we say, 30 years. I just want you to look at some of these things. 30 years times 12, interest rate. I tell you what, let's just do today. Interest rate, 4%, present value, 230. Payment, we're trying to figure out future value, payment, end. Okay, do that number right there. This is at 4%. So this is roughly current rates. So 360, 230, 0, tab, 12, tab, 12, tab, end. Tab, payment. Okay, so the payment on a 4% interest would be, what was it, 1098? 0.055. So this is at 4%. You can see the difference dropped roughly $300, right? Okay, now do this. Instead of making a payment 12 times a year, just make the payment. Keep that 1098 there, okay? But change it to 13. Just change that to 13. And no, just change that right there to 13. Leave everything else the same. Leave that the same. And I want you to come up here and calculate the number of years. Okay? Now you're going to have to make one of these negative or leave that in there 1098. So you're going to have, this is basically if you decided I'm going to make one extra payment a year. I want you to see the number of years change. So I'm going to leave that as a negative. I'm going to come back up to the top. And what did you get? Oh, I didn't change the. So the compounding actually stays at 13, enter. Compounding would stay at 12 because they're still only calculating it every 12 months. But we're coming back up. And what did you get up here? 336.605. And what do we have to do to that?
Divided by 12.
And what did y'all get when you did that?
28.05.
That's not right. Hold on. Maybe I'm not doing something right. Oh, but did you divide it by 13 or divide it by 12?
I divided it by 12.
Yeah, divide it by that PPY. So I'm going to do 336. So let me see. Escape. So 336 divided by 13, roughly 26 years. You shaved 4 years off of your mortgage. I think it was, maybe it's a lot more than that when the interest rate's higher. But I shaved 4 years off my mortgage by just paying one extra one a month. Are you with me? So at 26 years, you've paid what? Roughly an extra 2 years in payments, but you shaved 4 years off your mortgage. I mean, little things like that. Even if you have a good month and go, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit more in there. Like, let's just leave this at 13. Right? Little things you can do. So I'm going to leave that. Let's just say my payments were right here. I'm going to go back and recalculate this back to where it was, 360. All right, payments per year, 12, 12, 12, doing all this. What if instead of a 1098 right here, and I'm going to, I'm just going to change this 1098. What if I said, you know what, I can do it. I got a raise. Instead of putting that 1098, which is roughly 1,100, I'm just going to put an extra 200 a month and just make it 1,300. So an extra $200 a month. Look what it does to that right there. So you're still doing all these payments. Menu 8, 1, tab. I'm changing it to 1,300. Back to 12, and number of years. That changes to 267.74. If I divide 268, I'm just going to do 268. If I do 268 divided by 12, 22 years. So I just shaved 8 years off my mortgage for an extra $7 a day. I mean, these are little things you could, for $7 a day. I mean, think about little things you can do. That means you have 8 years that you don't have to pay $1,100 or whatever your mortgage was, $1,300. 8 years are gone from your mortgage. You find yourself 44 years old and you're mortgage free. I mean, at $1,100, that's what, 13 something $1,000 a year. You and your spouse can go to Italy. You can go play. You can further fund your retirement, all kinds of different things. But the point is, little things you do on your mortgage. If you can't afford it, you can only pay the minimum. That's what most people do. They just set it up. But every now and then, think about it. What if you're rolling along, you're paying your bills, you're investing, everything's good. You know, you've got a little slush fund for that bad rainy day call you get. Oh, you got black mold. It's going to cost you $12,000. I got that call. You got a little black mold in your vents. Yeah, we're going to have to seal those up. How much is that? Oh, just $22. $2,200. At least it wasn't $22,000. They got to go in there and send a little scope in there and spray paint all my vents. I'm like, great. I don't even get to see anything pretty from it. It's like It's just awful. And he's like, 2,200's down the, but you keep a slush fund for that. You do that. If I got a raise, like if I suddenly got a raise at 6,000, 10,000 or whatever, which is not abnormal in the real world, you get that raise, you're like, I don't really need this. After taxes, it's $7,000. I'm going to take that $7,000, which is roughly what, 600 a month. I'm going to put an extra 600 a month towards my mortgage. Boom. Your rate just drops 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then you're free from that mortgage, which is a huge thing. You just don't realize how nice that is to not have to stroke that check or not see it come out of your account. So all of a sudden, you're buoyed. Your disposable income, what you have to spend, is buoyed. So anyway, whatever. We've talked about a bunch of these things. I'm looking for ones that yeah, this is basically what we were just saying. So this guy had a house payment of $1,207. So this was asking you to run right here at $1,207, $191, 30-year mortgage, 6.5%. If he increases his payments to $1,500, what happens to his number of years? And it was roughly what we just did. He was raising his payment about $200 or $300. Didn't have to, but you can see it shaves off multiple years off of that. And War Eagle is super happy because of his diligence. I was really bored when I made out this worksheet. Anyway, does anybody have any questions on using your calculator? Did you run into any speed bumps where you got undefined or invalid domains that you weren't able to figure out? You feel pretty good about it?
For number 11, I entered in like the exact thing that the key had, but my calculator was just spitting out the wrong answer.
So you entered in, let me see, Biff got a loan, so you entered in
I'm probably going to try it again. It doesn't work, but
menu. So you entered in 360 or 30 times 12, tab, interest rate 6.15, tab 230, 3 zeros, tab, future value 0, tab 12, and your payment, you got what?
I got like 22 something. I was trying to do that. Yep, very good.
You got it?
Well,
Yeah, and here's the thing. That's going to happen every now and then on your test. You're like, I got it all in there, but I got a wrong answer. If everything's in there and your answer's wrong, you're getting dotted. I mean, I'm really looking at all these. Every time you have a different wrong value in here, you're going to get dotted if you move the decimal. You're going to get dotted if you forgot to take off the 50 down payment. Little things like that. Most people do really well on this. But occasionally, yes, you forget to change the end begin on your calculator, even though you circle the right thing. That's going to affect your answer a little bit. I just got you. So it's like a -1. Hey, a couple things that I have not talked about. If you look at your, gosh, where is it? I wanted to talk about, okay, so if you go back to these notes, I wanted to talk about a couple different things. Bonds. Have we said anything about bonds? Okay, a bond is something like if somebody needs money, and a lot of companies do this in addition to stocks, they do bonds. And the bondholders are a little different from the stockholders. The stockholders kind of make decisions about the company. If you own controlling shares, you get to vote, make decisions or whatever. Like I get sent this little prospecti or whatever, and I look at them and I can vote with my 100 shares versus 100 million out there. I rarely do. I just throw it in the garbage or shred it or something. But I have a voting share. I have a vote that actually means something in this company. A bondholder doesn't really have a vote, but if the company ever goes bankrupt, depending on the bond, I might have a right. Granted, this is not a good position to be in if you own bonds in something that went bankrupt. But like I have a right to the actual liquidated company. Like so, if some building that you had, they issued a bond like for a hospital or something, and they raised money by selling bonds. You're basically buying a sheet of paper that says they're going to pay you 3% or 2% or 5% every single year because they're borrowing your money. And you're like, great. It's a great thing to be in when you're an old person and you don't want to deal with the flexibility of the market and how it fluctuates. So you get into bonds. They pay less, but you're more secure. It's safer investment. Okay. but you don't want to leave your money in the bank because you're getting next to nothing. It's usually you're losing money by leaving it in the bank because the value is decreasing. But bonds will give you a little interest rate. And you're like, okay, I got enough money saved up. I can live off 3% of that. I can that with my Social Security or maybe my other retirement, whatever. I'm good. But yeah, you might own, if they ever liquidated the company and say it was a building, they sell the building off, the bondholders split that. You're not getting much, but you might get a little portion. A money market fund is kind of like a checking account. You can actually write checks off a money market fund, but a money market fund is very liquid. So you can take money in and out. You don't have to sell. It's not as tough to sell shares like it might be for a stock. It fluctuates less, pays less. It used to actually get 2 to 3% on a money market fund. Now it's 0.01. It's nothing. But a stock, I think you've talked about stocks. You can buy stock in every public company, like Apple or JDS Uniphase or Qualcomm or whatever. You can go in there and you can buy shares of that company. And as the stock price rises, if you sell those shares, you make a little profit. If the stock price falls, you're going to lose a little bit. And sometimes those stocks pay dividends, which means it might go, hey, we're going to pay 3% of the net worth of the stock to all of our stockholders. And you'll get a check for that. Or you can set it up where all of that just basically buys more shares in the company. So your number of shares go up and they're traded. Nice thing about a stock is when you buy one, you never pay taxes on the gains until you sell it. The bad thing about a stock is when you buy them, you never pay taxes until you sell it. So if I buy a share of Apple at $100 and it grows to $1,000, I could, that whole time I held it, it's growing in value, but I don't have to pay any capital gains, any taxes. But when I sell it, whatever it grew, 900, bought it for 100, grew to 1,000, 900, I have to pay capital gains tax. Long-term capital gains is less than short-term. Short-term is less than a year, but I do have to pay those taxes. Depends on also what income bracket you're in, that kind of stuff. And then last thing, mutual fund. Mutual funds are managed by people that want to get paid. So they're not a bad thing, but they are going to charge basically 1% to 2%. A lot of times there's a fee associated with them. Where an ETF, which is where all of my money is a security that's kind of like a mutual fund, but it has a really small fee, 0.25, 0.1. So the fee is almost negligible on the growth. So I like those, and I can buy into the stock market like this. Basically, I can buy funds that mirror the market so that they grow and move just like the market, not like any one particular stock that might crash or boom, but it's nice, a lot more steady having 500 companies wound up in your stock as opposed to one company. So I want to talk a little bit more about those. You guys, I think, are not in here at all tomorrow. Is that right? So nobody is in here tomorrow during these two periods, and I won't be here in the afternoon. So there's really nothing on the agenda for tomorrow other than maybe start working on that on the homework sheet, which is very similar to the classwork. And guys, start memorizing these definitions. You'll all be here on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I'm going to finish up talking about Roth IRAs, stock exchanges, all that kind of stuff. Are you with me? All right. And then right now, we're planning on that test on Thursday, but I'm flexible. Whatever.
On Friday. Why not? Oh, I will.
Oh, and here are our state championship trophies. Yeah, so big and powerful.
They're enormous.
Yes.
Strong.
We got state and we got district.
Yeah.
So many powerful teams in our district.
Somebody get that room out.
Just right.
Sorry. Are you okay? Did I run you into the desk? Oh, I'm sorry. Bye. I'm sorry.
See you guys.
David, great to see you again. I'm glad to have you on this.